Hello, I'm Sebastian Michael, and this is this Saturday's Sonnet. Take all my loves, my love, yea, take them all. What hast thou then more than thou hadst before? No love, my love, that thou mayst true love call. All mine was thine before thou hadst this more. Then if for my love thou my love receivest, I cannot blame thee, for my love thou usest. But yet be blamed if thou thyself deceivest by wilful taste of what thyself refusest. I do forgive thy robbery, gentle thief, although thou steal thee all my poverty. And yet love knows it is a greater grief to bear love's wrong than hate's known injury. Lascivious grace, in whom all ill well shows, kill me with spites, yet we must not be foes. And this is the terribly moving Sonnet 40. Now, last episode, you may remember, we were wondering what is it that the young man could have done for our poet William Shakespeare to be so upset. He called it a disgrace that had happened, having previously referred to our young man as gracious and kind, having previously compared him to a summer's day and favourably. Last week we arrived at a sonnet where he called his behaviour a disgrace, and then he forgave him. But we didn't know what this was all about. We could guess, of course, because with everything else that's going on, we are, after all, in a series of poems that come from a place of love. And so it's not entirely surprising, probably, that the offence, the disgrace, has something to do with love, something to do with somebody else. Now, this is not the surprising element. But what we learn here now is something really quite specific. Because the great big revelation of our Sonnet 40, and the reason why it is our sonnet this week, is our young man has not just gone off with somebody else, that would be one thing, but he's gone off with the poet's love, who is a woman. And this creates a whole new picture now, doesn't it? Because we know for a fact that Shakespeare is married and has a wife and children in Stratford, whom he visits. But even in this context, even in the context of a world where people are married in one place and have relationships, have mistresses, have affairs elsewhere, it is still quite an extraordinary deed on the part of the young man to not only have sex with somebody else, but do so with your friends, your special friends, maybe your lovers, probably your lovers. We've pretty much established that they're in a mutual love relationship by now. You go off with his mistress. Even by our standards, even by postmodern standards. And I have on occasion already pointed out how postmodern these sonnets really are and how contemporary in a way the relationship. But even by our standards, that is quite disgraceful behaviour, to go off with the mistress of the person you're having a relationship with. That's what we find out here, and that's what this sonnet is about. And no wonder our poet is dejected, and no wonder he now, in this bat 36 to 42, he goes to quite extraordinary contortions to make sense of what's happened, and also to continue this stance or this approach of forgiveness. And we will learn a little bit about that. But first of all, what does it mean? Sonnet 40. Take all my loves, my love, yea, take them all. It's pretty obvious. Take all the people I love. Clear from this, from the way it's phrased, is you've obviously taken one. Why don't you take all of them? It's Shakespeare exercising a tiny bit of sarcasm here. He doesn't do that all too often, I have to say, but here he does, and it's maybe an indication of just how badly he's injured that he resorts to this level of sarcasm. Take all my love, take them all. And the my love obviously is you, my love. Take all my love, my love. Yeah, take them all. What hast thou then more than thou hadst before? Obvious. What more? What can you gain from that? What would you have more than you already had? No love, my love, no love either a person or the thing, or the abstract notion, the emotion, love. It's equally valid, and probably both is meant. No love, my love, you again, that thou mayst true love call, either a person who is true or a love that is true. Both make equal sense. By taking all my loves, you don't gain anything more that you didn't have, and you certainly don't gain any love that you can call a true love. All mine was thine before thou hadst this more. You already had everything that I have to offer. You already had all my love and everything I have to offer before you took this as well. Then if for my love thou my love received, so therefore if for my love, and here there's a bit of either emotional acrobatics going on, or he's being quite factual. We don't know for certain. It's a question of interpretation. He either is saying, so if for my love, to please me, for the benefit of my love, for my affection, in order to gain more of my love, if to please me, you receive my love, this person, who we in a moment will find out is a woman, I cannot blame thee for my love thou usest. Then I won't be able to, I can't blame you for using my love. This is in a way quite a graphic illustration of what's happening there. It could also mean if for my love, it could also be as a substitute. So therefore if instead of my love, instead of me, instead of the love that I offer you, you receive my love, this other person whom I love, then I can't blame you for my love thou usest, again for using this person. It's interesting how first, especially considering that this is a woman, how first he receives her, the young man receives her, making him almost the passive agent in this, and then uses her, which is a fairly explicit way of saying what kind of a connection they have. But yet be blamed if thou thyself deceivest by wilful taste of what thyself refusest. Now this can again be read two different, slightly, subtly different ways, but the subtle differences I find very interesting and intricate and exciting. In the quarto edition, which is the one that we have, where all these texts come from, he actually writes, or it is actually written, but yet be blamed if thou this self deceivest by wilful taste of what thyself refusest. It gives it a subtly different meaning. He's either saying, be blamed if you either A, deceive yourself, thyself deceivest, if you delude yourself, by willfully having a taste of what thyself refusest, of what you usually refuse, which seems to suggest women. I don't know what else it could mean here, by willfully, deliberately, with a slight pun on Will's name, of course, by deliberately taking what you normally won't have anything of. And of course the young man's problem in terms of his family and everything, as we know, is that he's not interested in women, he's not interested in having children. That's how this whole thing started. The other way of reading this is, but yet be blamed if thou this self deceivest, which some editors say is a little bit inelegant, so they change this to thyself. I'm not sure about it. I'm not enough of an expert, I'm not enough of a scholar to be able to make a decision, so I've gone with what I found in various editions, which is thyself. But you could read, but yet be blamed if thou this self deceived. Be blamed if you deceive this self, me. If you want to deceive me with this woman by willfully tasting, by willfully having somebody who you would not normally go for. The meaning is subtly different, but in principle he's saying the same thing. If what you're doing is just willfully, just deliberately taking something that you would not normally even want, and you just take it because it's mine, then I do blame you. I do forgive. Having just said that, be blamed if that's so. He now says, however, continues, I do forgive thy robbery, gentle thief. But it is, after all, still robbery. There's no mincing of words here. He may be a gentle, well, actually there is mincing of words. He's a gentle thief, but it is robbery. I forgive you. I forgive thy robbery, gentle thief. Although thou steal thee all my poverty, even if you take everything of me, if steal thee all my poverty here, this means even if you take everything I have. And by calling everything he has poverty, he says, I have little. This, and we already know we're in a phase of the poet's life where he has not much. He is in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes. So even if you take all the little I have, all the poverty I have, I will forgive you still. And yet love knows it is a greater grief, and yet God knows, yet love knows. This is interesting that he puts love there. Love knows, because this is somebody has noted that this is the sonnet that has the word love in it most. And it's not particularly a love poem, is it? It's more like a confrontation and with forgiveness in it. And yet love knows it is a greater grief to bear love's wrong than hate's known injury. This is a well-established truism, that it's harder to accept a wrong that somebody does to you whom you trust, whom you love, than somebody whom you hate already, or somebody who you already consider to be your enemy. If your enemy does something terrible to you, big surprise, what's new under the sun. But if somebody who you trust, somebody who you love does it, that's terrible, that's bad, that really hurts. Lascivious grace, in whom all ill well shows. Lascivious for us is a strong word, and in this context probably is not quite as strong a word as we read it today. It probably means just, yes, it has sexual connotations, but it's not quite as derogatory maybe as today we would maybe consider it. It's more lustful, more lusty and lustful. Maybe you could call it horny by today's standards, I'm not sure. In whom all ill well shows. All ill, everything bad in you still shows well, because you're so beautiful. Kill me with spites, yet we must not be foes. And he actually says it, doesn't he? He says, go ahead and injure me with this spiteful behaviour, kill me with it, if that's what you have to do, but we must not be foes. I won't allow this to get between us. This is not going to be the end of our friendship and of our relationship. Kill me with spites, yet we must not be foes. That's our sonnet number 40. And it tells us an awful lot about our poet, where he's at. It tells us a hell of a lot. It tells us probably more about the character of the young man, or certainly it tells us more about the character of the young man where he's at this moment than we have learnt before. It's worth remembering that this is a very young person who's very beautiful, very aware of his beauty, very good looking and very powerful. We have never actually said yet who we think this is, because that would be real conjecture at this point, and you will not believe, actually you will believe how much people argue over who this is or is not. And I think it would be anticipating, it would be way too soon right at this point to put a name in there. But what we can glean from the words, and this is our approach, is it not, to read the words and take what the words give us. And what we've certainly understood from the words is that this is a very young person, a very powerful, a very well-established, very highly regarded person. But we certainly can't, at this stage in the proceedings, assume that our young man has a great deal of emotional maturity. And this sonnet here would support any perception of this young man as very young at heart as well, as a young adult whose behaviour is not necessarily as considerate or as mature as it even could be at his age. I think we can imagine this man to be in his very early 20s, maybe even late teens, early 20s. But we have no evidence of that, so I'm just putting that in as a suggestion, not as something that we know for certain. What we do know for certain is that he's done something terrible. We know for certain that he's gone off and he's taken the poet's love, his mistress. I mean, he's been told now for poem after poem after poem that he is the poet's love, but he's gone off with the poet's mistress. Now this is interesting also for another fact, because there are one or two sonnets in here in which the poet himself talks about his own disgrace that may tarnish the young man's reputation. And this creates a difficulty because it's happening exactly in the context of the young man's behaviour being appalling. And it actually may make more sense than at first glance seems to be the case, because after all, we know that Shakespeare is married in Stratford, and his having a mistress in London, or having several, may or may not, I can't be sure about this, but may or may not be considered in principle disgraceful behaviour in sort of moral context, because after all, you get married, for better or for worse, till death do you part. And so it's interesting, I think, and it's worth probably looking at these other sonnets in this batch a little bit, just to touch on them, to find out what the context really is. Listen to this is quite interesting. Let me confess that we two must be twain, although our undivided loves are one. So shall those blots that do with me remain, without thy help by me be borne alone. In our two loves there is but one respect, though in our lives a separable spite, which, though it ought not love's sole effect, yet doth it steal sweet hours from love's delight. I may not evermore acknowledge thee, lest my bewailed guilt should do thee shame, nor thou with public kindness honour me, unless thou take that honour from thy name. But do not so, I love thee in such sort, as thou being mine, mine is thy good report. Now, I don't want to go into detail about this, but you can see what he's doing. He's saying, there's a separable spite. There's something in our lives that makes it necessary for us to be separate. And I don't want my tarnished reputation to reflect on you. And this could well be something to do with this other person, we don't know, but it's interesting that this already is in there in the poetry. Then we have 37 and 38, which I don't really want to touch on. They're quite different, where the poet finds reasons again to praise the young man. First, like he praises him like a father would praise a child, and then he praises him again in the context of the muses, and also in the context of the way other poets might express themselves. So whatever is happening, there are other people in the constellation. Although the poet says, our undivided loves are one, there is interference from the outside. Very, very interesting. Very interesting because the poet says, our undivided loves are one. This is not ambiguous. He's not saying, I love you, and you're away, or I'm away from you and I love you. He says, our undivided loves are one. We love each other. We are one, effectively. But there are outside influences that threaten this. And then 40, take all my loves. Yea, take them all. So we can't really say that there's a build-up. There's more interference. There are other people on the scene. There's another poet, which we've already heard about a bit, and there's clearly a separable spite. And then, dong, take all my loves, yea, take them all. And then in 41, we have a change of tone. Those pretty wrongs that liberty commits, when I am sometime absent from thy heart, thy beauty and thy years full well befits. For still temptation follows where thou art. You are absolved. This is the way it is. This is the way the cookie crumbles in the mug of tea of love. If you are as beautiful as you are, then people will pursue you. Gentle thou art, and therefore to be won. Beauteous thou art, therefore to be assailed. And when a woman woos, what woman's son will sourly leave her till he have prevailed, or till she have prevailed? Another little word there, another little tiny word over which there is big debate who's prevailing over whom. It really actually doesn't matter all that much. What this amounts to is me, the poet, saying to you, the young man, I get it. I get it. You have this lover who's quite a bit older than you, who's a man, and we have something going on. But you are beautiful. You're attractive. People fancy you, and we live, after all, in a world where what we have is not actually strictly allowed or legal, is technically frowned upon, even though it's very, very commonplace. And then also really noteworthy, because extraordinary, 42, that thou hast her, it is not all my grief. And yet it may be said, I loved her dearly, that she had thee is of my wailing chief, a loss in love that touches me more nearly. And then this contortion over how I can forgive you both, this, where he's effectively saying, well, because you both love me, that's why you also need to love each other. And so if you are together, then you're effectively doing it out of love of me, is what it amounts to in a nutshell. But interesting two things to note here that I think are very, very, very significant in the context of this scenario that we have. That thou hast her, it is not all my grief, and yet it may be said, I loved her dearly. There's a loved there, not I love her dearly, I loved her dearly. This would hint at a transience of this particular connection between the poet and this particular woman. That she hath thee is of my wailing chief. What concerns me far more, what concerns me mainly, is that she had you. A loss in love that touches me more nearly. The poet, the poet, prioritize very clearly and unambiguously, again, who matters in this and who doesn't matter so much. The question, of course, immediately presents itself when we have this woman appear in what now is a triangle. Is, oh, who is this woman? This is interesting. Of course it is interesting. And we, of course, don't know. We have no idea. At this point, we have no idea. Now, we know, when we look ahead, that at the end of the sonnets canon, there are the Dark Lady sonnets. And some people have argued, and continue to argue, that this may well be the same person, that the person at the end of the series, the Dark Lady, may in fact be this woman here who's appeared. And that therefore the Dark Lady sonnets really actually belong here in the sequence. I don't know whether this is so, and I don't know that this isn't so. I just don't know. We from the words, we cannot be certain. What we do know is this is the first time now that we really have a person interfering in this relationship as somebody else who gets in between these two men, who disrupts things as far as the poet is concerned. And of course, it's somebody who the poet already is having an affair with, a relationship with. And so also the question, of course, immediately presents itself, well, why does the young man do it? Does he really just do it to spite our poet? Does he just do it to spite me? Or is there more behind it? We don't know. All of these things we simply don't know. But what we also don't know is that it is this mistress, for want of a better word, this girlfriend, this mistress, this woman who continues throughout the series. There is no indication of that yet. It could well be one of several. It could well be somebody who appears and then disappears. And we have no idea as to her identity at this point. What we do know, and what we've learned from Sonnet 40 and from Sonnet 41 and 42, is that the disgraceful thing, the terrible thing that our young man has done is he's gone off with his lover's lover. That's how complicated it is. It's complicated. On Facebook you'd say it's complicated. Because after all, the lover is also married, just by the way. That's how the relationships, the constellation are. It's highly, highly mixed up and very, very involved. And as a little footnote here, we've occasionally observed how it makes sense to maybe put things a little bit in context of the Elizabethan world, of the world of Shakespeare, of 400 years ago London. And one thing that I think is interesting and noteworthy, and that helps us to understand these people's world and their emotional world, is to remind ourselves how rough and ready and how physical and how emotional and how real life, direct, involved their lives really are. Remember, just once every so often, let us remember we are in a world that has no electricity, no running water, no Of course, no communication, no phones, no internet. I mean, we're stating the obvious, but try and imagine this. This is a world in which you are born into incredible dangers, into diseases that kill you, into wars that are fought face to face, in which for the slightest transgression you can be incarcerated, where you can be hung, drawn and quartered. We've already mentioned that. Where people who are executed have their heads chopped off and plonked on spikes so that everybody can see this is a bad person. Where getting into a brawl is almost commonplace. Where the smells and the sensual experiences are really, really visceral. They're really real. You are not protected from your environment. You have no. The ordinary house doesn't have glass panels. It doesn't have triple insulation. It doesn't have central heating. You don't take the tube to work. You walk there, or you go to the place that you need to go on a horse. It's a physical world, a world in which everything is experienced very, very immediately, very directly, and in which you have to get on with your life, because you may not have very long. You may not survive more than 20, 30. If you're doing really well, 40 years. If you get to the age of 52, as Shakespeare does, that's brilliant. You know, that is it's not unheard of, but it's good. If you're a poor person, you're likely to die much sooner. And so no wonder these people lead their lives like young people. They lead their lives intensively. They have intensive relationships that matter, and they are completely not blasé, and they are not Victorian. They are not stilted. They are not aloof, and they are not above it all. They are right in the middle of everything. And here we've seen how very much in the middle of everything we are. And I want to conclude this episode maybe with just once more reiterating something I've already said at the end of last episode. The notion, to my mind, by now, that these sonnets are not real, that they are not about real people, that they are writing exercises, or say a challenge. Let's write some sonnets so that some gullible person in 400 years' time might construct from it a story. It's possible in theory, just about. It could be conceived of as something that somebody might do. Is it likely? If in the absence of certainty, likelihood is our friend. Is it likely that this is what happened? Of course it's not likely. It's extremely unlikely. What's extremely likely, what's practically certain, is that these are real felt emotions about real people who are in a real constellation, who really are messing around and messing things up, and who have the power of human emotion and the fallibility of being humans, and who don't quite know how to conduct themselves, as none of us really do. They're learning, they're doing, they're maybe doing things for the wrong reason. They get in each other's way, and they fall in love with each other, and they see each other do wrongs, and they forgive each other. This is completely real. I cannot imagine that this is just somebody sitting at home fantasizing about various different kinds of relationships that now come into each other's, that now play into each other. While it's just about still possible, I think it's fanciful in the extreme. I think here we're experiencing the real William Shakespeare, the real poet, and his real young male lover having gone off with his real mistress. And let's see what happens next, because of course there are many more wonderful sonnets to come. And in the meantime, remember, love is the power, and see you next week.